Hey, it's the OwlBoiz with Tree.
And super awesome Overlord W.
So today we're going to be talking about Life is Strange Before the Storm. Now we both played the original and we wanted to see what we both thought of the prequel to the game.
Yeah. So for context, Tree gave me Life is Strange Before a Storm as a challenge to beat it throughout the entire year. I had the whole year to beat the game, and I beat it in about a month. Well, okay, I beat it in 4 days.
Yeah, the game isn't very long. It's only 3 episodes.
Yeah, and we beat it in 3 sittings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so first off, what do you think of Chloe versus Max?
As a romance, or
just as a main character. So in the first one you play as Max,
right?
And then in this one you play as Chloe. So what do you like? What do you think about the difference there?
I think Max was made more as a silent protagonist. I mean, she has some opinions, but it's mainly your opinion.
Yeah, she has a lot of. She has a response to everything. You could talk to a can, and she'll release the crack can. And
yeah, so I think Chloe definitely has a much stronger personality, but they were still able to let you kind of insert yourself, because at the beginning of this game, without spoilers, it's more of that she's trying to figure out who she is now before, of course, Life is Strange, but after the death of her dad.
Right. Yeah, I actually felt like Chloe had a lot more character, just because you don't really get to know Max's parents at all, and you don't get to know her family members. But with Chloe, she has that dynamic where her mother is seeing a new guy after her husband passed away, and she's trying to move on with that. And then you also get to see how Chloe is trying to move on with it in her own way, and you can see the difference between the two characters.
Yeah.
Dealing with the father's death. And as far as Max, you only get context of Max's family through cell phone texts. And her mom doesn't talk about herself. She doesn't say anything. She only responds to what Max does. So in essence, Max's mom isn't a character at all.
Yeah, it's been a while since I played the original, but I definitely don't remember much at all about the parents, because I think they just didn't stand out because they're just text messages and pictures.
Right. So, yeah, as far as interacting between characters, I think both games are really strong, but as far as learning about the lifestyles of these two characters, you really get to know Chloe.
Right.
Where she is in her world, as opposed to Max, which just enters this new school. Everything's new for her.
Yeah.
So you're just as unfamiliar with Max's existence as Max is. So
yeah, so I think they're both good main characters to go with, but definitely Chloe's the more likable one, because she has more personality, because she's had her personality in the original. Mm-hmm. And she's less insertable, but still insertable enough that you feel like you're part of her life, but she has her own life.
Agreed. She has her interaction with Frank. She's already known Frank for a while, right?
As a drug dealer, yeah.
Yeah. Are they friends at all before, or are they just drug dealer and customer?
Yeah, they're just drug dealer and customer. They just can be friendly. As an option, he asked you to help with Drew and those kind of things. So it's friendlier, but not necessarily friends.
Right. And then later, it really shows they do seem to have some kind of friendship going on later on. But yeah, as far as getting to know Chloe in the first few minutes, aside from Max, does she have any standout? Elliot, is that his name?
The first friend?
Yeah.
Yes.
Does she have any other standout friends that are established when she's first introduced?
I mean, everyone in school knows her. They know her as this delinquent.
The troublemaker, yeah. She has all these you hear about all these antics that she's done and stuff that she's gotten in trouble for, but you don't really see.
Yeah, because in the diary she even writes like she has no friends and that kind of thing. So.
Yeah, I glanced at the diary from time to time, but as the game went on, I actually stopped reading it.
Yeah, I think it's just in the beginning that she mentions that.
Yeah.
Well, obviously because she gains Rachel as a friend and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so how about, let's talk about Rachel then. So what do we know about Rachel and her introduction to the game?
So I think the way they did Rachel was really well done because in the original you don't really get to know a lot about Rachel, so you just make your own kind of assumptions about her. Mm-hmm. But they do mention like how everyone knows her, she's super popular, and the way you get to know her as being like this great actor, but also this like interesting person, like it all lines up really well with her character and what you know about her in the original.
Yeah. When you first meet Rachel, like, everyone in the school assumes that she's, like, the perfect, like, honor roll student and all this stuff, and she has everything going for her. And you eventually learn that she's got her own flaws, got her own deal going on. But I actually can't think of any, like, established flaws, except for the ones that you learn throughout the course of the game.
Yeah.
Like, don't remember reading any papers or anything in her room that say that she's going through any kind of hardships. Like, can you think of anything? Like, okay, aside from her dad, is kind of a sneaky sneak.
Yeah, so I think that's the cause of all her troubles, is her complicated feelings.
Yeah, before that, she just seemed like she was just doing a normal high school thing and not really having any problems. I mean, maybe with Victoria, stuff like that, but...
Yeah, nothing major.
Yeah. How about, like, what do you think of how Chloe and Rachel met?
How did they meet again?
So, okay, Chloe was at a bar.
The mill. At
right.
The mill, the party at the mill.
Yeah, the party had a name. It was like... It was a concert.
The firewalk.
Yeah, she was going to the firewalk. Chloe went up on the banisters. She went up and listened to the band up there because she couldn't get inside because she snuck in. And you got to meet that Vinny guy. Was it Vinny?
No, it was Sheldon.
Sheldon?
The bad guy?
No. You met the bouncer. Like.
Oh, his name was like something Thunder.
Okay. For now, we'll call him Vince Thunder.
I think it was like Johnny Thunder. I don't remember.
Thunder? I like that name. Okay, so we met Johnny Thunder. He was pretty cool.
The Samoan guy.
Yeah. He has minor interaction later, but all that matters is Chloe snuck up onto the banisters and she got into a fight with two guys.
Right. The skeevy guys.
Yeah. And after your choice of fighting back or running away, Rachel comes and saves the day by chucking a glass bottle at them. And that's kind of how they met. But it seemed like Rachel kind of was like watching Chloe like before that. Like, did it seem like that to you?
I'm not sure how they planned to have her show up, but I did like the way that she showed up. So maybe that she just noticed she went up there. And then the guy, she could have seen it like from the bottom if she had looked up. So I'm guessing that's some way she saw, and then she decided to go help.
Yeah.
And so I really like the way they introduced her. It was very like fast, and that's kind of the whole relationship, especially because they have to fit it within a certain number of days. It's very fast, but I think they did a good job of making it really believable.
Agreed. Yeah, I like that they 1 second they're just beating up guys at the bar, and then the next moment they're just on the dance floor dancing. And that's how they became friends. That's a fun little foundation for their characters.
Yeah, so speaking of their foundation and their friendship, do you think that the romance option is a good one? Because you have a chance at being romantically involved with her or just being really good friends.
So this was something I felt was a lot different than from Life is Strange 1 going into Before the Storm, because when you first meet when Chloe meets Rachel, Chloe's kind of in this point in her life where she's causing a lot of trouble. She's in this like downward spiral of just doing bad things just for the sake of doing bad things. She's not really like, nothing in her life is prompting her to like do drugs or anything. She's just got into these bad habits just because that's what her normal is now.
Well, I think it's her normal because of the trauma she's going through with her dad's death and the other guy moving in. And, well, not moving in, but being part of her life more.
Yeah. So, I really like how Chloe meets Rachel. Well, okay, I don't. What I mean is Chloe meets Rachel. I really don't like the idea that they immediately form a romantic relationship. Though, as you pointed out, it seems like it's canon. The game like wants you to lean towards those options. Whereas in Life is Strange, the first one, I actually thought that a romantic relationship was more fitting for Max and Chloe because they already had that established friendship when they were younger. And
right.
Now they're kind of picking up their friendship where they left off back when. So even though it's a short amount of time, just like in Before the Storm, they still have an established friendship. Like they know each other,
right?
And so like I can imagine in that scenario that like feelings could start building to be like more romantic than they would be in a situation with like Rachel and Chloe.
Yeah, and I think you make some good points, although I think I disagree.
Mm-hmm.
Just because the way that their friendship is so fast, I think romances can also be fast.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually think it makes more sense for Rachel and Chloe to have a romantic relationship just because their personalities are really closely aligned. They're both very, like, strongly opinionated, free spirits.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I think they can create a spark in a romantic relationship so fast. Well, like, for Max, although, I did choose the option to have romantic relations with Chloe, I felt like it was more of my interest in Chloe over other options, while Max actually didn't fit as well romantically with Chloe. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I just felt like with her dad's death and with all these other things on Chloe, if that was me, I probably wouldn't be seeking. I wouldn't be like jumping into a romantic relationship. Like if it turned out that way, like if Rachel was to like approach me with the romance, then I could see myself getting like into an immediate relationship like that. But as far as me and my life as a person that's grieving and a person that's rebelling, I don't imagine that romance would be like my default, even if I had a physical attraction to that person, just because I'm just not in the right headspace for that. I wouldn't even like consider it an option, basically.
Right, yeah, and that makes sense.
What did you think of Chloe and Rachel's relationship as far as romantic-wise? Like, as they
progressed?
Yeah, because you're the one who went the more romantic options.
The aggressive romantic route.
Yeah. I didn't even get the kiss option when it became available, so.
Yeah, so I think they did it really well because it wasn't, like you said, like it is fast, but they do have time to build it up when you decide not to throw the belt over and come around with the belt while she's like undressing, or you make flirtatious comments and things like that. So even though it is kind of fast, there's definitely building of it. It's not just sudden and out of nowhere.
Yeah, it for me, it almost felt kind of like they were flirty friends. Like, you get the option to sneak around the curtain while she's getting undressed, and she's just, like, playful. It's like, oh, ha, 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 I can't believe you did that, and stuff. And then, like, the kissing, like, it's like moments will appear where it's like, okay, yeah, let's kiss. Okay, yeah, let's do this silly thing that enhances our romance. But other than that, they're more friendship-based. Does that make sense?
Yeah. But I think even more so that in this game than in the original, they gave more chances to be flirtatious. Well, like, Max and Chloe really only get a couple of small scenes to hint at anything romantic. And while in Before the Storm, I mean, I didn't count, but there was a good number of moments for that.
Mm. So would you go on a date at the junkyard?
I'm not really fond of junkyards.
Yeah, me
they're
neither.
probably really smelly and stuff, but apparently it works for Rachel and Chloe.
Yeah, it's just kind of like a pile of treasures for them. I don't think if you went to a real junkyard, you would find like just trash littered everywhere and just like, because I'm pretty sure they sort it now at real junkyards. So like, you can't really just go around and just find cool stuff there. And
Yeah.
so it's not like the scavenger hunt that they make it out to be in Life is Strange. So I feel like a junkyard would just be kind of like a gross place to hang out.
Okay, but going back to the game.
Yeah.
So one thing I was really interested in, like when you mentioned Elliot and things earlier, is like, does the story, like the ends, the ending of the story, does it flow into the next story seamlessly?
Kind of. There's a lot of characters missing.
Right.
Like, obviously, we learn about Nathan. We learn about him growing into the kind of person that he becomes in Life is Strange.
Right.
Going into spoiler territory now, for spoiler warning.
Yeah.
Nathan, he's kind of just like a bully, but then he kind of develops into like someone that's kind of being like abused by his father, like not abused, but like belittled.
I would say it's abused. It's verbally abusive.
Yeah, verbally abusive. That's a good word for it. He's really put down by his father. He's yelled at by his father, and you can see how he's going from being a bully to someone that can be manipulated by characters that are in Life is Strange.
Right.
There's a romantic option for Nathan, I think. I missed it entirely. I just know it exists because in the ending you see her on the tree and she just walks away.
Yeah, that's one of the things I think didn't fit as well. It's like, there's the girl Samantha. If you got a better ending than we got with her, you have the option for them to build a relationship or a friendship, at least it looks like by the end. But she's not really mentioned in Life is Strange, the original.
I think I'd have to go back and check, but when you go to the cellar, the secret cellar, there was a bunch of names on folders. Maybe Samantha's is one of them.
That could be true.
Which would imply that she's probably dead in Life is Strange.
Right, but Rachel's the one that's supposed to be accidentally dead and the rest aren't supposed to be. So maybe she just left? I don't know.
Okay, so there's characters like Katie who we know had these things happen to them.
Right.
But Katie was fine, except for the abuse and the trauma. She became suicidal. But she wasn't murdered like Rachel was.
Right.
So maybe Samantha, something similar happened. Maybe Samantha just left Arcadia Bay because of trauma or something. Or I don't know, because they were all drugged when it happened, right?
Yeah, so it could be, very muddled memories and things like that. So, yeah, because I think the only reason Katie realized that happened because of the pictures that came out.
Right. Oh, you're right.
So I think, I guess maybe Samantha could have been one of the girls. But otherwise, it's like, oh, I don't remember. But that could have been the reason why. So then that would have made sense.
Yeah. Other characters that return are the groundskeeper, who we only see once in Before the Storm. And you don't get to see his kind of eccentric side.
No, if you take the time to talk to him, you definitely see his eccentricities. He's just definitely a more prominent character in the original.
Yeah, and then there's Victoria.
Who's the same.
Who's exactly the same. The only difference is she's not the head of the club. And she's not the popular girl because that spot is taken up by Rachel.
Yeah, she's second best.
Yep. And who else is... David. David actually seems pretty cool in this one. As far as, like, he's not immediately hateful
and
aggressive as he was in the beginning of Life is Strange. It's almost like they assume you already know who David is as a character, so they don't bother to see why his character is so drastically different from the beginning of the first game.
I actually think that they wanted to keep his personality, but in the original, I think they make him much more aggressive because of what's going on, but also because they kind of want you to think maybe he's responsible.
Right. They have a lot of red herrings in Life is Strange.
Right.
1. You have the principal, you have the groundskeeper for a little bit.
Yeah.
You kind of eliminate him as a suspect fast, but you also have Nathan, and then you have the principal and David, and then the actual culprit.
Yeah.
And then there's the principal, who is exactly the same.
That's very true. I don't think he changes much except he starts drinking in the original.
Yeah. I forgot what happened with the principal as far as the money in Life is Strange 1. What was his deal with that?
Yeah, so there was an option where you're suspicious of the principal. So when there's a point where you go into his office and you find that he has this money that's claimed to be for a building from a fundraising. You have the option of taking it because you think like, he's corrupt and is just going to use that money for his own personal benefit, or you can choose to leave it there. And you find later, if you leave it there, that it actually goes towards a building where it's supposed to go.
Right. And that's playing into that red herring prejudice type
right.
of deal.
Or just plain greediness.
Yeah. Or just stealing the money.
Which actually has a lot in Before the Storm. You have 2 options to get a lot of money.
Yeah, you can steal a lot of money in Before the Storm. I stole the t-shirt money. So at the beginning of the game, you have the option to steal a t-shirt. Oh, wait, no. I didn't steal the t-shirt. I stole the t-shirt, but I didn't steal the money.
I also didn't steal the money.
Did you steal a t-shirt?
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely. I mean, screw that guy.
Right?
But not, like, ruin his life forever.
The other option for stealing money was with Drew and his brother, whose name escapes. Mikey, that's right. And we very differently on this part. So I stayed with Mikey.
And let Drew get his knee, like, wrecked by this evil drug dealer guy.
Yep. And you went the other route. Now, how do you feel about the route you took?
So I have no regrets. Because, I actually kind of rewinded, in a sense. Because initially I was staying with Mikey, but once I heard that the Drew, who was a football player, which you find out has, like, a full ride to university through a sports scholarship, gets his, like, knee wrecked, I was like, I think it's better if he goes to that university and, that he doesn't have the money to help his dad initially, and he'll get that money later, but he can't get his knee back, so.
Right. I remember you, even before you knew that Drew was going to get hurt, you immediately reset. Like, you made the decision and then you reset just because you knew, or you had, like, a feeling that Drew was going to get hurt if you went. So you were just like, you made the decision. He walked out the door, and even before the fighting started, you were like, no, and you hard pressed the reset button.
Yeah, so I definitely didn't know what the long term would be. I can only made my own predictions.
Mm-hmm.
But so I made that decision to give Damon the money, and I don't have any regrets about it later.
Yeah, I remember we both sat down when that option came up, and we both were struggling to decide. Like, we were talking about it before we had to make the choice, and it was hard.
Life is Strange, like, that's one thing I like in this one as well as in the original, that they just hit you hard with those decisions. Like, none of them are just super, okay, I'll just do this option. It's like those hard decisions when it's all...
Yeah, the noise really gets your anxiety up.
and they're just hard decisions. And while the results can kind of vary, whether they're harsh or not, the decisions weigh heavy on you as the player. And I think that's one thing they do really well and continue to do well in this prequel.
Yeah, I agree. All of the decisions were murder. Like, I felt like both options, like, you can really feel that the consequences of these actions, like, in real life, the taking of the picture from David or not taking the picture, like, that probably wouldn't even register to me as, like, a big decision between my relationship with David or not. But the game really emphasizes that this is a turning point in your relationship.
These choices will have consequences.
Exactly. Like, there are definitely times in my life where I feel that mental boom and then, like, circle to make a life choice.
They definitely feel like life decisions, but for Chloe or Max.
Exactly. Were there any regrets in the first game, in Life is Strange 1?
So with Life is Strange 1, I regret letting the plant die. Because I overwatered. I gave it too much love.
Yep.
Too much affection.
We are 2 for 2 in plant murder so far.
They don't even give you a choice in Before the Storm. You just get 2 ways to murder your plant.
Yep. I overwatered my plant as well. I was like, I'm going to keep watering this plant, and at the end it's going to be healthy and happy, and nope. I overwatered it, and it died.
So you said the original, right?
Yeah.
So with the first one, what was one thing then? Oh, I remember. So I think I'm pretty confident in all my choices, and I think I made the right ones. Mm-hmm. My only mistake, because I didn't know who the culprit was, I warned Victoria incorrectly and got her caught by the culprit. So that wasn't a good decision on my end.
I made a lot of bad mistakes when I played the first game. I didn't take the decisions put as much gravity into the decisions I was making as I should have. And I ended up getting poor Katie killed, but I also got Frankie and his dog killed. No. Just from terrible decision-making skills.
Yeah, I remember you were watching me as I did my playthrough. Which I did last year as my challenge from DoubleU.
Yes.
And you saw Frank and his dog be perfectly fine. And you're like, that was a lot different than the way mine went.
Yes, I was so excited for you to get that part. I'm like, oh man, Tree is going to be like, whoa, mind blown. But then the scene just came and went, and she was just like, okay, well, I'm glad that went the way it did. And I was just like, no way. What was that? This was nothing like the when I played it.
Yeah, so I think that's another thing they do really well, is that with different decisions, that they really get different outcomes. Like the overall ending, you have kind of big major things lined up at the end. But, with the other decisions, they definitely take different turns in the storyline. I think it more so in the original, but I think they did it pretty well enough in Before the Storm that I think they did a good job.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about Rachel's mother.
Oh, okay.
So you had a lot of changing opinions on Rachel's mother, it seemed like, when you went through the game.
I think on both her parents, really. Like, initially, when you find that Rachel's dad, spoilers, is kissing some random woman in the park. Mm-hmm. Then you're like, oh wow, and what a douchebag. And then when you go meet him, and he's kind of like standoffish and super conservative in a way that's really rude, not even like open-minded or anything, but very closed-minded, you're like, yeah, this guy sucks. But the mom's like really nice to you. She really appreciates and tries to be funny with you, even though she's not hip to the teenagers.
Yeah.
So I think that she seemed really nice. But then you find out that Rachel's dad was keeping away Rachel's biological mother from her, and that's who he met, and the situation that came with that. And so we had paused the game and we had talked a little about it. And I mentioned how, I think if someone kept me away from someone they thought was really destructive and didn't tell me about them, then I think that would have been a good choice. Even though Rachel was obviously really hurt by it because he kept it away from her.
Yeah, when we came to that point, it wasn't even a big decision in the game. We just paused the game because we knew it was coming, and we both had to decide if we were gonna, or we both chose to decide if we were gonna help Rachel see her mother or try to prevent her from seeing her mother.
Right.
And the game Rachel basically makes up her mind. You don't really influence it.
As much,
she is just determined to see her mother. Now, of course, we know that ultimately our decision is what gets her to see her mother or not, but we didn't know that at the time. All we knew is we were going to decide if we were going to help James prevent Rachel from seeing her mother or actively help Rachel to find her, and we both went different routes on that decision.
Yeah, and that's going towards the ending. So it's one thing I think that they maybe missed the mark a little bit on two people. So I think with her dad, it seemed really reasonable, but at the time it made like sense. But at the time you're like, well, someone deserves to know the truth. And so when they make it clear that like her father hires this drug dealer guy to like drug up the biological mother because she used to be a drug addict, so that it keeps her away, that's really extreme. And so I mean, I think it still kind of makes sense with the character that Rachel's dad is, but it seems a little extreme to where you think they could have maybe made it make more sense than just suddenly sprung upon you. But coming back to the ending, right, is that you get the decision to tell Rachel what happened, that he did that, or to keep it from her, but keep her family together.
Yeah. I found Rachel's family to be really interesting. So it seemed like James was the quote-unquote villain of this game.
Right.
I mean, for real, it was Damien. Damien was, like, the most threatening character. But as far as, like...
Damon,
yeah. Oh, you're right. Thank you. As far as, like, the character that we had to see beyond their motives, the stuff that they were hiding, James was the one that was hiding the truth from Rachel, and the character that we had to basically overcome to learn the truth, which was that her mother was actually starting to improve, and you find this out through like the checks that he was writing had been voided, and you found out that she's been sobering herself up for a year in order to get the opportunity to meet Rachel.
Right.
But Hugh was trying to prevent that from happening, which, to be fair, she did do the things that she did, and James was just not forgiving her for those. I forget what did James do that caused Rachel to despise him? Like, what was the...
At the ending?
Yeah. What was the truth?
He used paying Damon to drug the mother.
Oh my gosh, that's right.
That's what I was saying. It's kind of extreme. Kind of.
Oh my gosh, yeah. That is just evil. Oh my god.
It's like, oh, you're a recovering drug addict? Let's give you that drug again and make you go back to the life of not a life, really.
Man, that's way more evil than I thought.
Yeah, his dad's pretty evil.
I thought, okay, my assumption was that he was just letting Damon. Mm-hmm. He was letting Damon kind of like not go to jail as like an informant, kind of.
Yeah, he was also doing that. He had evidence against Damon for a crime.
But he was keeping him as like something to like help catch other criminals, right?
Wait, no. So the guy Thunder, Johnny Thunder, I don't know his name, but
Right.
something Thunder.
Mm-hmm.
He was the informant, and so you had to get rid of the evidence that incriminated Damon in a crime against someone, a violent crime, and you had to tell him who the informant was.
And so, in exchange, and this was to have Damon
Kidnap
drug
Sarah and then drug her. Yeah, not a great life choices there for
Not
James
great
Amber.
life choices.
I mean, I guess so if you don't tell her. It works
Indeed.
out in his favor.
Yeah, and then they just live happily ever after with Chloe feeling guilt and trying to keep in this secret.
Exactly.
So, I chose to keep the secret. You chose to reveal it.
Right.
So that was another big choice that we separated on.
Yeah, so do you want to talk about why you made that decision?
I made the decision because that was kind of the wishes of the mother. When we were speaking with the mother in the
mill, burnt down mill.
Yeah. She was saying that, she was basically admitting to herself that she wasn't ever going to be Rachel's mother. She regretted the things she did. She wanted to meet Rachel and do all these things, but after all that's happened, she was coming to the realization that her life with Rachel, or all the things that she did with Rachel, had consequences, and she was just accepting them at that moment. And she wanted Rachel to have a family. Mm-hmm. And I wanted Rachel to have that family structure. And also, I probably missed the part where James was super evil.
Right.
I wanted Rachel to have, because she's still young. She's still a child.
Right.
She is, 2 minutes away to going to college, but she's still a child. And, I don't want her to just suddenly, abandon her family and then go live on her own, because she would basically be throwing everything away. She had a lot going for her, and I wanted her to keep that up. I wanted her to get into a good college and all this other stuff. I tried to think of Rachel's future when I made this decision.
Right.
Because that's kind of what the game put me in. That's kind of the choice that the game presented to me. It's do I destroy Rachel's family by revealing James's secret, or do I let the lie keep going for Rachel's sake? The game, that's what Sarah said. She said, "This isn't for you. This isn't for James. This isn't for me. This is for Rachel." And then, of course, now I have to think of what's best for Rachel.
And that's what I think the game does really well at the end, is because you could easily be like, oh, of course I'm going to tell him the truth. But with the use of Sarah, especially making her seem like a really intelligent and selfless character at the end, they're able to use her to explain to the player what that consequence will be, so you don't just immediately jump on one.
Right.
And so you really have to weigh it. And it really seems like it's leaning for you to keep the truth, at least with her character. But just thinking about my own personal opinion, if this was me in this situation, if I had a secret biological mother who had all these issues but now has fixed herself and wants to meet me, and if I was the parent, and if I was someone who knew about it, if it was me, if I would want to know or not. Mm-hmm. And like I said initially, if I knew this was a terrible person, then it'd probably been a good idea to keep it from me. But if it was someone on the road to recovery, and obviously, is doing so much to meet me, then I would want to know the truth. Especially because the father does something so evil. Even though, people say they need father figures in people's lives, and that makes sense. But I think it's better to know the kind of person your parents are, even if there's something that you don't want to confront or don't want to know. Mm-hmm. So I made the decision to tell the truth. Her family was torn apart. But man, are me and Rachel the closest of buds now. And, besides the funniness of that, I think it's the right thing to do. And that's what I think, and that's why I think Life is Strange as a series does really well in general. Is that it really? I mean, if you choose, you could just make whatever decisions you want. But I think it's trying to make the player think about the decisions and weigh on what their moral principles are.
I thought it was interesting how earlier in chapter 2, I was the one who wanted to get Rachel to meet Sarah, and you were the one who wanted to keep Rachel from meeting Sarah.
Right.
But at the end, I was the one who kept the secret, and you were the one who told the truth. So it's almost like the moment we learned about Sarah's rehabilitation, we both kind of switched sides.
Right.
And I thought that was interesting how we both stayed split the whole time, but we both abandoned our own
initial decisions.
Our initial reaction. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, and that's why I think this is a great game. That's why I wanted to, although I gave it to you as a challenge, I wanted it together because it's really interesting to see the different decisions and results that you get with this game. And so I think it's an awesome game. And although it's single player, I think it's a really great game to discuss afterwards, like we're doing.
Yeah.
To think about our own moral principles, our decisions, what happens in the game, what we thought about those decisions, and you know how that reflects in real life themes as well as in a fun game.
Because even though the specifics aren't relatable, like the general situations are extremely relatable, and the problems that they have, like obviously you're not going to have like specifically a mother who is a drug dealer and your father who is the big important person that he is, whatever position I forgot now, at keeping the secret, but you still relate to her on a level of personal experiences because similar things happen.
Yeah, like a lot of people have, parents who have secrets or flaws, and whether you want to know them or not. And, there's people who have been adopted and don't know their biological family, or, different situations that can cause those things to happen. And so I think they're really great to be relatable to the audience. And, I found myself relating to the game much more in this one, actually, than in the original.
Yeah. And then, obviously, situations like Drew and...
yeah, like, football players. A lot of athletes, go through... That's why I actually known a couple of high school athletes who, through injuries, were unable to go to the college they wanted. And so I think that definitely influenced my decision with Drew.
So, what about the first game as far as the choices? In Life is Strange 1, your goal is to stop this predator.
Right.
Professor Jefferson, is that his name?
I think it's Mr. Jefferson.
Mr. Jefferson.
Because they're in high school.
Right. So, Jefferson, I don't feel like that situation is nearly as relatable as far as Life is Strange Before the Storm.
Mm-hmm.
You don't really... Like Max as a character is relatable. She is kind of this awkward person who isn't the best friend ever. She kind of abandons Chloe, but with all her flaws, she tries to make up for it, and that's cool. But then she has to be a superhero to stop this crime that's being committed on the school, and that kind of removes the relatability. Like these characters. When I played Life is Strange, I found that game extremely relatable. I found that game like all the situations and interactions and relations with these characters to be so like they felt genuine.
Right.
But then I started seeing the lack of identity, like the lack of connection between my life and Max's when I played Before the Storm, because that game seemed to have really nailed the relatability that Life is Strange kind of made a foundation for.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely a selling point of the original is because it's relatable, but I think the major theme of it was the mystery and the supernatural power that was a major theme in it. So while this one didn't have that supernatural power, which we can get into later, is that it was much more focused on the relationships and how they built them and those connections. So I mean, there was mystery because you didn't know what was going on, but it was like a small theme in the overall theme of the relationship between Rachel and Chloe.
Yeah.
So what do you think about the lack of the rewind mechanic?
It made all of the really pressuring decisions a lot harder. I actually felt like the rewind mechanic was almost kind of cheating. I mean, in a good way. Like, I felt like that game had like a theme of your short-term consequences don't matter at all, but your long-term consequences matter a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
So, like, you basically get to see what your short-term consequences are, but then, like...
the long term you don't realize.
Yeah, so it's like, which short-term decision do I make? And I get to see it, but then you don't know how that will affect down the line. For example, one scene I felt had that strongly was you go back in time to when you were a child and you have to hide the dad's keys. Short-term wise, you see... You know what the long-term consequence of hiding his keys are. But so you want to hide the keys. You want to save this father.
Right.
By hiding the keys from him so he can't go out and pick up the mother to get groceries. Because you're trying to prevent this long-term consequence, and because you have all the control of the short-term consequence, and then you learn that the long-term consequence is infinitely worse than the one that with the knowledge of without stealing the keys and hiding them. And I feel like that's a big theme to Life is Strange 1, where you have all the control of the short-term consequences you want. You can do anything in that regard, but tomorrow's going to come and these consequences are going to carry over, and you just don't have control over those. And the game really seems to hit that home. It really wants you to notice that.
Right, so what about in Before the Storm?
In Before the Storm, you don't have control of power. And in turn, I actually think it was a good idea to make this a prequel, because you already know the long-term consequences of this entire game. You know that David is going to become kind of like a jerk groundskeeper, and he's going to get fired and all this other stuff, and then the principal, and all these characters. So you already know the consequences, your long-term consequences. So that's kind of alleviated so they can work on different themes. And the theme with this one seems to be more around family. I think the big theme on this one is family, because Chloe herself, she's not having a good family situation throughout this entire game. She's trying to accept David. Her mother is trying to get Chloe to behave, but she's also trying to get Chloe into her life and accept her decision to be with David. Meanwhile, Rachel and her family dynamic is just completely chaos throughout this entire game. And so I think they didn't need the rewind mechanic, but I still would have loved to have it.
Yeah, because like I was saying, I did rewind, technically, in a way, one of those scenes. And so I think if they're able to make it available to the player, but not through, plot, through Chloe somehow having these powers, I think that would have been really helpful. And I think it would have kept the same kind of mechanic that's unique to Life is Strange.
Yeah. Because like I said, the theme of the games, the power reflects the theme, which is something I thought was really good about that game. And then the aspects of Chloe, a lot of those aspects reflect the theme. But I think Life is Strange as a game kind of was defined by that mechanic more so than the theme. So I do feel like the game was lacking without this time power, and they didn't even have to give a story reason why it exists. It's just you just hitting the reset button, kind of like a mobile game,
Right.
where it's like, oh, it's pause, reset, and then they don't have to give reason why the reset
Right.
rewind power is back. They just have to put it in, basically.
Exactly. So they end up replacing this mechanic with the back talk mechanic, which doesn't work as well as the rewind. But what do you think of the back talk mechanic?
The back talk mechanic is funny as an idea, but it's just a mini game at its core. You basically have to listen to the conversation, and you have to make a witty remark that relates to what they say. So you have to listen in for like a keyword. So if they say like, don't play games with me, young woman, and then you just like have to latch onto that word game, and then twist it around on them, and it's like, oh, you're a game to me, or something lame like that.
Exactly. And I think it is a fun mini game, and especially fits personality. But yeah, it didn't really was as good as mechanic as the rewind, and it didn't really serve like, I don't know, what did you think of it?
Yeah, it fit the theme of Chloe, so it was good, but I definitely felt like it didn't define Life is Strange Before the Storm like the time rewind power.
Yeah, it didn't add anything significant or make it part of the theme like the rewind mechanic did.
Right, like all of Life is Strange is this rewind power. Like you can't think of that game without thinking about the rewind power as like integral to the part, but you could actually forget the backtalk ability is even in the game.
Yeah, I remember like for a long period there wasn't one, and then suddenly it popped up as an option. You're like, oh yeah, that thing.
Let's do that. I even missed like 2 of them. Like there was points where you can just, instead of taking the aggressive backtalk route, you could be subservient and just like go with the decision of the NPC. Mm-hmm. For example, David was in a car and he just wants you to behave, and you can either just agree and go with what he wants, or you can do the backtalk option. I just went with the behave option.
Yeah. What might even been better is if they made the backtalk more difficult. I mean, I don't know how it was for the average player, but I felt like it wasn't that hard of a mini game.
I agree, because there was only like 3 options at any given point, and you just really had to latch onto keywords that were in the responded.
Right. Because I did look up later that there were some interesting... It seemed like there were some interesting ends to if you failed the backtalk mechanic. So I felt if they made it a harder minigame, that would have felt like a more significant part of the game.
Mm-hmm. Interestingly enough, I kind of wish the mother scene with Chloe had been a backtalk, simply because not because how they did it I felt was wrong. It was the only time in the game where you went through those irreversible decision trees. So in Life is Strange 1, there are several scenes where you couldn't rewind, and because whenever Max gets a headache, she can't rewind, but several branching paths occur before in a conversation. For example, getting Katie off the roof so she doesn't commit suicide. And this moment with Chloe's mother is the only time, or Rachel's mother is the only time in Before the Storm where you get that mini game, kind of, in a sense. But because it was the only time it appeared in the game, I didn't actually know that's what I was doing. So I ended up failing. And of course, it ultimately didn't matter because I didn't make the decision to reveal James's secret to Rachel. Mm-hmm. But had I made that decision, then if I had gotten all the correct answers, or at least enough to where the boost that the game, my decisions had given me, Rachel would have met her mother regardless. And like I said, I didn't know that was the decision I was making. I thought I was trying to convince her to meet Rachel, but I felt like, just like most of the situation in this game, it was ultimately like inevitable. Like the game kind of railroads you at times. Like when Rachel wants to meet the mother, we both decided I was gonna try and
you're gonna prevent her. No, I was gonna prevent her.
Yeah, you were gonna prevent her. I was gonna
have her see her.
But the game railroaded you to where Rachel was determined to see her and Chloe was going to help. And I felt like that was the same thing with that. Like, maybe something would happen, but, like, that point, those answers that you gave weren't what made that decision.
Yeah, that's true.
So, if they had made that minigame, which admittedly was too easy,
mm-hmm.
the part... that conversation, I felt like that would have at least enhanced that moment as far as gameplay wise for Before the Storm.
Yeah. I'm not sure if I entirely agree, because I really like the idea that Rachel, makes her own decision and comes to that decision.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, definitely it would have enhanced Chloe's influence, because definitely her dad at the moment kind of tries to tell you to keep her from her, mm-hmm. and then you don't really get the option to do that.
Right.
So I do agree in part, though. That was making me think about how in the ending, it's basically very hard to get her to see her mother.
Yes, extremely.
So they give you, I think it's six choices, and you have to get 5 of them correct.
Unless you make certain decisions prior.
Right, yeah. I was going to get to that.
Yeah.
So, yes, you have to make 5 out of 6 choices, and I got 3 of them, so I didn't succeed. But that's what I was trying to do. Because I told her the truth, so that I wanted her to meet her mother. So like W was mentioning, there's a scene where you ask for a tattoo, a bracelet, or a kiss in order to for Rachel to convince you to go along with her plan to leave Arcadia Bay forever.
Mm-hmm.
And I chose a kiss because I was going the aggressive romantic route. And you chose the tattoo.
I did choose the tattoo. I felt like I didn't really know the significance of the bracelet at the time.
Right. I don't think either of us knew the entire game.
Yeah, until Rachel just straight up told us. Because even when she told us in the bed, like, oh, I've been wearing this bracelet forever, I completely forgot taking the bracelet was an option.
Right.
Now that I think about it, I remember it. Like, the moment, like, I was reminded of that scene, I remember there was a third option, and I did remember the third option was the bracelet. It's just, I didn't make 2 and 2.
Right, but the bracelet, you come to find out, came from her mother, so if you're able to give her the bracelet at the end, which neither of us did, because we didn't ask for it, you only have to get 2 of those options, so it's significantly easier. But I think they did that well, though, because they had it as an option, but it was kind of like a secret option. Like, you didn't know that would have changed the ending that much.
Yeah.
And so I don't disagree with how they did that, but I think that's interesting that the backtalk option was so easy, but yet the picking the right choices at the end there was significantly harder.
Yeah, and I like the way they did it. I'm glad that it was hard. I just wish that if they were going to implement that mechanic from the first game, to either do it more often, like multiple times in the game,
right,
like they did in Life is Strange 1, or to replace it with the mechanic that we already know and understand. Because in other video games, for example, like Battletoads and Kingdom Hearts, for example, the very last boss just gives you brand new mechanics that you're not used to. And as a game, I don't like that.
Yeah, it's really rude.
So, like, in Life is Strange 1, or this mechanic occurs multiple times, at least 3 times, or probably 2.
The backtalk?
No. The irreversible.
Oh yeah.
Conversation.
I'd say about 3 or 4 times.
And it appears none in Life is Strange Before the Storm, except in the conversation of the mother.
Right.
So I just wish I had known I had been thrown into a mini game before it occurred. Like, I still would have made the same choices that I made. It's
Right.
just, I kind of wish that they had told me, like, hey, this is a moment that, you know, will affect what happens between Rachel and your
Right.
mom. You don't know what's going to happen, but this is that moment.
You're like, where's the warning?
It's just, in other conversation in a game, you just talk and then there's like multiple options, and then you talk and there's more multiple options, and then you go back and you can make the options that you didn't choose before, and then you keep doing that until you exhaust other options, and then when you talk to them, they're just like, oh, hi, okay, bye.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, and I agree.
Yeah, and that's kind of like what I felt was happening with the mom. It was just a more dramatic, basic talking to a character,
Right.
NPC.
So, so I think we've talked a lot. So,
Yeah.
what's your overall impression of the game? Would you recommend it? Who would you recommend it to?
I would recommend this game to people that are just getting out of college or not high school. I feel like this game is showing high school to older audience. Like, I feel like the high school students would get something out of this game. I don't feel like they would get as much out of this game as an older individual, someone who's just getting out of college or who's just starting college. Maybe like if they're starting college late. I feel like because at that point they've made their choices in life. Like they're actively in the consequences of their own choices at that point.
Mm-hmm.
They've decided their degree and all this stuff. And I feel like a game about choices and consequences would resonate more with people who are existing in the results of their choices more than a person who's still finding out who they are as a person. And that's to say, like, Max and Chloe, they both are trying to figure out who they are, and I do think that part of the game will resonate with younger audiences.
Mm-hmm. No, I think you've kind of hit the mark. Like you're saying that it's more impactful as someone who's reflecting on decisions they made than on ones they are currently or having to make in the future.
Exactly. So while Chloe and Max will resonate with younger people as characters, the game as a whole would resonate more to people who are older and making decisions and have lived with consequences of their choices.
Okay. So one more question I thought of, and then I'll give my response.
Okay.
Is would you recommend playing the prequel first or playing the original first?
That's actually a really hard choice because obviously I played the first one first.
Right.
And then I played the prequel. Overall, I would actually say Life is Strange 1 was a better game. Life is Strange Before the Storm was a better story. It was a more
cohesive.
It was a more personal story, a more relatable story. Life is Strange 1 is a better game and a better story structure.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's very subtle difference, but a difference.
Yeah.
I would say if you play Before the Storm before you play the first game, you would probably be disappointed with the story of Life is Strange 1.
Mm-hmm.
And if you play Life is Strange 1 before the Storm, you'll be disappointed with the mechanics, which is what we were disappointed with. We wished we had that reverse mechanic. So I would actually say playing Life is Strange 1 first, as far as enjoying the other one, is better. I would say playing Life is Strange 1 first, and then playing Life is Strange Before the Storm second, because you get it doesn't impact the story of Life is Strange 1 as it doesn't harm the story of Life is Strange 1 as much if you play the first one and then Before the Storm.
Okay, so I think recommendation wise, I would highly recommend this game, especially if you've played the original. I think you really enjoy it. Like I said, we're disappointed in the mechanics a little, but overall the story and a lot of the themes that Life is Strange series has really hits home. So I actually would recommend it. I agree with older people. Definitely not kids. It's a little too hard for kids.
Yeah. Nothing below high school.
But I actually think teenagers might, respond well with the game, and that maybe makes them reflect more on their own decisions. And I think it can be actually even more impactful because they haven't made those decisions or not fully yet. So I actually recommend it for teenagers, but also older people, even people who are even older than college age, parents and things. Like I think it's a really enjoyable game for all ages because it's not necessarily a difficult game like Dark Souls or something like that. It's, it's walking simulator. You have to make decisions and they're hard, but there's nothing mechanic wise that would make it significantly difficult for anybody.
Beating the game is inevitable, but how you beat the game is what is important to you when you play it.
As for what I recommend, I actually think it'd be good either way. So I think you could play the original and really appreciate the game, and then play the prequel and really appreciate the story. Or I think you could actually, because that's what I didn't look at the prequel or anything before, because sometimes studios don't do prequels that well. There's a lot of spoilers.
Agreed. Yeah, I was really skeptical when I first heard about Before the Storm.
Yeah, but having played it, it definitely seems like there's no spoilers in it. So that's also something they did really well, is that you could play the prequel, and obviously you'll know who Chloe is and who some characters are, but it doesn't impact the decisions you'll make in the first game. So I think it would be interesting to have someone play the prequel and then the original and see what they think. But I think it could work either way.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's our discussion on this game.
So, what are your thoughts on Life is Strange 2? Like, what are you?
Oh, the new one.
Yes.
I haven't heard much. I'm trying not to hear much.
Same.
Definitely gonna wait till it's all out, which is actually easier than I thought. Like I haven't seen a lot of people putting up spoilers everywhere.
I haven't either.
So that's really good especially online.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I'm gonna wait till it comes out. I'm really looking forward to it. It looks like what little I've heard is that it's definitely not dealing with the same, at least the main characters of these games. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing it because looking at Before the Storm, they did a really good job, and I'm looking forward to the sequel. I guess kind of a sequel maybe, but yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I feel the same. When I heard that Max wasn't in Before the Storm, I was really skeptical. I was like, I don't know how much I'm gonna like Before the Storm because already they've changed the game a lot.
Yeah.
No time rewind mechanic. But I think Before the Storm made me more optimistic with Life is Strange 2.
Yeah, definitely.
So far I think 3 episodes of it are out.
At least 3 is close, yeah. I mean, who knows when we'll post this, but...
Yeah. Okay, well, yeah, this was a lot of fun. I know this one was kind of not super organized, but I still enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was really good, and I hope we keep doing this.
Yes, me too. All right, this is Overlord Super Awesome W.
And Chi from the OwlBoiz.
The OwlBoiz.
See you next time.